Okay, we're closer to the end of Perek Lamed Gimel. We are on the top is page 84. At the bottom is 152. We're 4 lines in the end of the page. Okay, what we learned last Wednesday was the Chavakuk put the whole 630 mitzvahs into one mitzvah called Tzadik B'Manasa Yichya. That Tzadik lives with Emunah. Now, what does it mean, Yichya, that he lives with the Emunah? It means because a person who believes in Hashem and he realizes that he breaks evil, and not only breaks evil, but like literally transforms evil to good, that level is such a tremendous satisfaction by Hashem that Hashem reveals a greater revelation than he normally reveals. Like in the Hemshech Abasi Lagani, they quote the Zohar that says, when you break evil, is talik yikara de kutsha brichu b'chol ha'am. And the Rebbe learns what means is it becomes revealed a level of godliness which is normally removed. Istalik means removal from the world. Istalkus. But it means istalik yikara de kutsha brichu becomes revealed a level of godliness that's so infinite and so great that it's that level is revealed. So he says you can imagine the person's simcha when they transform. So therefore, a person should be happy when they're doing Torah mitzvahs because they were accomplishing, like you said before, the king leaves go of everything else that he's doing and he comes and unites himself only with you. And he says now, 4 lines in the end of the page, especially in the lands outside of Eretz Yisrael, Shaviram Tame, where the Chachamim said the air itself outside of Eretz Yisrael is impure. Umali klipes sidrach, and therefore it's full of evil. So you can imagine, he says, Ein simcha lefanav yisbarich. There is no greater joy by Hashem. Ka'eda v'simcha, like the light and joy, v'yisin ha'erd haba min ha'cheshach daik, when light comes in darkness. We learned before in Tanya, the Rabbi explains, Shlomo HaMelech says, the pasuk in Koheles, Re'isi sheyesh yisrin l'chachma min ha'sichlos ki yisrin ha'er min ha'cheshach. Okay? Shlomo HaMelech, simply the way you translate the English translation of this pasuk is, Shlomo HaMelech says, I see that there's an advantage of wisdom over foolishness, like the advantage of light over dark. I mean, you don't need Shlomo HaMelech to tell me that brilliance is better than stupidity and light is better than dark. And also, the wording of the pasuk grammatically seemingly is incorrect. Because what he should have said is, I see there's an advantage of chokhmah al hasichlis, over foolishness. Ki yisin ha'ard al ha'cheshach, like the advantage of light over dark. But that's not what Shlomo HaMelech is saying, because Shlomo HaMelech is teaching us something extremely profound. What Shlomo HaMelech says, Al Rebbe explained before in Tanya, you know what the greatest level of wisdom is? Min hasichlis, when it comes from foolishness. When foolishness is transformed to intelligence, there is no greater intelligence than that. And then he continues, what is it likened to? Ki yisrin ha'ard min ha'cheshach, when light comes from dark. And like we learned last week, not that you dispel darkness, you get rid of darkness, it's only when the light's on. When you close the light and the light's off, the darkness is back. The ultimate odd is min ha'cheshach. So that Rebbe is saying over here, you can imagine the simcha that Hashem has, generally speaking, when a person does a mitzvah, especially when they do a mitzvah outside of Eretz Yisrael. where the air is tummy and the earth is tummy, everything is tummy, and the darkness is so powerful, and yet the Jew is transforming the darkness to light. Why is it that the Zohar says on the pasuk, Meisha anav ma'id mikol adam asher apnei adam? In Parashat Balesha, the pasuk says, Meisha was the most humble Jew that ever lived. So the Zohar says an interesting one-liner, so to speak. He felt the most humble and inferior when he saw the generation right before Mashiach. The Zohar says the pasuk is emphasizing Moshe was most humble mostly when he saw our generation. What's our generation? Our generation, the darkness, the world is so messed up. The darkness is so bad. It's thick darkness. And yet Jews still do Torah mitzvahs. In Moshe Rabbeinu's time, miracle after miracle after miracle, revelation after revelation after revelation. So of course they did Torah mitzvahs. Big deal. In our generation, and that's the greatest simcha, that a Jew realizes Hashem has unbelievable simcha, because look what I did. I transformed darkness to light. I did my bitterness, I'm not using the word depression, the bitterness, the meridus, and transformed it to the level of Tashmieni, Sasan, the simcha, that it becomes simcha, like Dr. Rebbe explained before. And that's what he said. This is one of the 12 psukim, by the way. Yes, Machisrael Ba'esav, that the Eden rejoice in his maker, Pirush, which means Shakol mi shuhu mizari Yisrael, any person that is from the seed of Israel, meaning any Jew. Yesh le'smeach b'simchas Hashem, he has to be happy with the joy of Hashem. Asher sos v'sameach, that Hashem is happy. B'dirasi b'tachtenu, when he makes a dwelling place down here, which is Asiya Gashmis, Mamish. Where is Dira b'tachtenu, dwelling place for Hashem? In the low world? Dr. Rebbe, we didn't learn yet, but later on, Dr. Rebbe is going to explain that is in the world, Shem Tachton Lamate Menu, there's nothing lower than it. There's nothing lower than this world. And over there, Hashem decided to make a Dira b'tachtenu. How did he make a Dira b'tachtenu? When a Jew does Torah mitzvahs. So therefore, he says the person has to have the simcha and the joy that the person is creating from darkness. They're transforming it to light. And then he says like this. It says, Yismach Yisrael Ba'esav means the ones that made him. But it's plural, Ba'esav. Hashem made us. Why are we saying Ba'esav plural? He says, Loshen Rabbin, because it means Yismach Hashem Ba'esav, meaning in this world of Asiya. Yismach Hashem, the ultimate simcha of Hashem. What's the ultimate simcha of Hashem? In this world, Ba'esav, when it's done in the world of Asiya. When the darkness is transformed to Kedusha, that's the ultimate Shalom Azah Gashmi. Umali Klipis V'Sitracha, which is full of evil. Shenekra Shusterman, which is called public domain. There's in Torah you have private domain, that refers to Hashem's domain. Echad, but there's only Hashem. Then you have Shusterman, which is diversity, pluralism, anti-oneness of Hashem. The Torah, the Pruda, and mountains of separation. And when you transform pluralism to light, and it becomes the private domain, when you have this emunah, then what you're actually doing is transforming pluralism to oneness, diversity to unity. And like we said many times, on the currency of America, it says in Latin to make one from many. The role of a Jew, and the Rebbe spoke about this many times, on the currency of America, the thing that makes the world go round. What does it say on money? In God we trust. All others pay cash, but in God we trust. And to make for many one. That's the whole Aveda of Tachtenu. To take diversity, pluralism, and make it into one Hashem. That's the ultimate level. Okay. Somebody's asking about pets. With you, if it's your pet, you have an obligation to feed it, but you still can't pick it up. You can feed it. Other animals, you're not allowed to feed on Shabbos. Okay, Perek Lamed Dalet. So now the Alter Rebbe continues in this concept, but a little bit differently about what a Jew can accomplish. It's well known. Chazal say the expression "Shaha'abis ein heina merkava." It's a medrash. And by the way, Rashi brings it down in Chumash, this expression of Avis Heina Merkava. What does that mean? There's an expression in Chumash when Avraham Avinu was arguing with Hashem. So it says, Vayal me'olav Elokim. Simply means Hashem went off him. Vayal me'olav Elokim. Hashem went off from Avraham Avinu. It's an expression like you're riding a horse and you get off the horse. So the Medrash says, what is that pasuk teaching us? Ha'aves hein merkava. Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov are merkava. What's a merkava? Merkava means a chariot. A chariot goes where the rider leads it. The chariot has no opinion of itself. It goes where the rider wants it to go. So it says, Ha'aves hein merkava. What does that mean? So he says, Shakol Yamehem, their entire life, La'elam, forever. La'yafsik or afilu sha'achas. They didn't stop even for 1 second. Milakashe daitam v'nishmosam, combining their mind and their neshama, L'ribein ha'olamim, to the Master of Heaven, Hashem, B'bitul anal liyuchud yizbarich. Okay? What were the others, the unique Merkava? The others were completely bottled to Hashem, 24/7. We'll get there, I know today, but the Alter Rebbe will explain when Yad Machalik Tzedakah, that's the Alter Rebbe's expression. When a hand gives tzedakah, at that moment, the hand is a merkava to chesed of atzilus. When a person does a mitzvah of chesed, he becomes bottled to chesed of atzilus. The difference is, by us, it's only the second you're doing the mitzvah. A minute later, the hand could do something that he's not allowed to do. The mouth speaks Torah. At that moment, the mouth is a merkava to chochma of atzilus. The problem is, a minute later, the mouth can speak lashon hara. The others, hein heina merkava means 24/7. They were completely bottled, non-stop to Hashem. That's the obvious. Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov. The Shvatim is questionable also to such an extent. Kol Nevi'im, all prophets, Kol Echad Lefi Madregas Nishmasi, based on the level of their neshama. If it was a greater neshama, it had more bittul. A lesser great neshama, less bittul. Vasagosai in his understanding of godliness. Umadregas Moshe Rabbeinu, and the level of Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hashalom, he Eilal Kulana was greater in bittul than all of them together. Moshe Rabbeinu's bittul Tashem was the ultimate level of bittul. She'amru Olav, that they said about him, Shechina medaberes mitagreinu shel Moshe. The Shechina spoke through Moshe Rabbeinu's mouth. What does that mean? Let's discuss this point a little bit. Moshe Rabbeinu, number one, like we just said before, Anav Me'ed, Moshe Rabbeinu was most humble. Moshe Rabbeinu was very humble. Moshe Rabbeinu's level was bittul. Moshe Rabbeinu was chochma v'atzilus. Okay, the others, you were Abraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, Chesed, Gvura, Tefes. Moshe Rabbeinu is chochma, chochma is bittul. Moshe Rabbeinu was so bottled to Hashem that when he spoke, it was the Shechina speaking between out of his mouth. In reference, what does the Chazal tell us this? The book of Dvarim, the whole book of Chumash Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu spoke. Okay? These are the words Moshe Rabbeinu spoke. Moshe Rabbeinu spoke the whole Chumash Dvarim. In Shema, in the second paragraph of Shema in Parshas Ekev, Moshe Rabbeinu says, "V'nasati esev b'sotcha levamtecha v'achalta v'savat." Moshe Rabbeinu says, "I will give grass in the fields for your animals, and they will eat." So Chazal basically that since when does Moshe Rabbeinu give grass? It's not Hashem speaking. Chumash Devarim, Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking. So he's saying, "V'nasati esev," Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, "I'm giving you grass." Since when does Moshe Rabbeinu give grass? So the Zohar says, alluded to in Gemara, in the Medrashim, that Shechina medaberes mitagret. When Moshe Rabbeinu spoke, it was God speaking through him. It was God speaking through him, which means a very interesting concept. It's like when somebody speaks through a microphone, and you hear from the speaker, the loudspeaker. So you can say, "Oh, 1 minute, the speaker said I'm giving grass." It's not the speaker. It's the talker speaking through the technology of the speaker, through the microphone. But when you hear it from the speaker, it doesn't mean when you hear it from the machine, the loudspeaker. The loudspeaker is not giving you anything. The speaker is speaking, but the vehicle for you to hear it is going through the loudspeaker. When Moshe Rabbeinu spoke, Hashem spoke through his mouth. His mouth, Moshe Rabbeinu's mouth, was the microphone of Hashem. So if you're talking about ultimate bittul, that's the ultimate bittul of Moshe Rabbeinu. And Me'enza, similar to the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, Zachu Yisrael b'maimed Har Sinai. The Jews merited by Har Sinai. What happened? Hashem revealed himself to the Jews. But what happened? The Jews couldn't handle it. The Jews couldn't, it was too much. And every word that came out of Hashem's mouth, the neshamas popped out of the body, and Hashem had to resurrect them with the dew that he's going to resurrect the dead with when Mashiach comes. So the Jews had that gilui, but they couldn't handle it. Moshe Rabbeinu handled it. All other Nevi'im, by the way, couldn't handle like Moshe Rabbeinu. All the Nevi'im, the passage basically says, without riddles. All other Nevi'im, the Rambam brings this down, the Gemara brings it down, Medrash brings it down. All the prophets had prophecy when they went to sleep at night. It says they took off their clothing and they had prophecy. When? In middle of the night. Why in middle of the night? That's when the neshama leaves the body, the neshama goes up, then they get the nevuah. But while they're in the body, there's no way they can get that prophecy because they can't handle it. Like the Jews by Matan Torah, the neshama popped out of the body. Moshe Rabbeinu was able to handle it. Therefore, what the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu? Pel Padaber, like face to face when he's up, not in a riddle, not in sleeping. Moshe Rabbeinu was at ultimate level, which is inyan bittul b'mitzias. Which is bittul b'mitzias. So he says like this. The obvious Aramaic, without that is leading to, by the way, every Jew when they knew mitzvahs is a merkava tasha. So he's saying like this. The obvious are completely the chariots of Hashem, completely bottled. And therefore it says Hashem went off Avraham Avinu like he was riding him, because Avraham Avinu, so to speak, was like the horse going only where the rider wants him to go, where Hashem wants him to go. And he says the obvious were Merkava, the Nevi'im to a certain extent were Merkava. The Jews handled it, we had it by Matan Torah, but they couldn't handle it. Therefore, because the Jews couldn't handle it on a permanent basis, Miyad Amar Lahem, Hashem told him right away, Lasis the Mishkan, to make a Mishkan. Right away, right? Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain after the 120 days. He told the Jews, go build a Mishkan. Why? The revelation of Hashem of Matan Torah could be handled in the masses of the world. Hashem said, build me a home. I'm keeping this revelation here. And he says, Uvei Kodesh Kadoshim. In Mishkan, or in the Beis HaMikdash, was the Holy of Holies. La Shiroes Shchinasei, for the Shechina to rest, which is Gilu Yechudah Lizbarah, which was the revelation of Hashem's oneness. And like we learned, why is he emphasizing the Kodesh HaKadoshim? The Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, was a very, very unique level of Kedusha. In this coming week, it's the 5th parak of Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah in the beginning of the 5th parak says there are 10 miracles that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. 10 miracles that started in Nisim, Lav, same Beis HaMikdash. Okay? And there's one major miracle which is left out. And that is, Chazal said, the Gemara says in Yuma, Makim ha'adan enem min amida. It was an unbelievable concept. I'm talking about the Beis HaMikdash now. The Holy of Holies was 20 cubits wide. Okay, 20 cubits wide. The Aron was 2.5 cubits wide. The Aron was in the middle of the room. Okay? The room was 20. If you measured from one end of the Aron to the wall was 10. If you measured from the other end of the wall of the Aron to the wall was 10. The Aron took up 2.5, meaning 10 plus 10 plus 2.5 equals 20. And it wasn't because they learned in yeshiva they didn't know how to add. Okay? This was not stam a miracle. So the question is, the Mefarshim ask, why isn't that miracle mentioned amongst the 10 miracles in the Beis HaMikdash? So some people answer, some Mefarshim answer, because that the Jews didn't see. That was all the way in. Only the Kohen Gadol saw it on Yom Kippur. Nobody else saw it. So here we're talking about 10 miracles that constantly happen. Okay, fine. Chassidus explains it much deeper. That was a different level of, different caliber of miracle completely. And this is what Dr. Rebbe is alluding to here. What does it mean it was a different caliber of a miracle? Let's take a miracle, Kriyas Yamsuf, when Hashem split the sea. Unbelievable miracle. What did Hashem do? Hashem took nature of water, which is flowing, and he changed the nature. He made it stand without a wall. What is a miracle? A miracle is when you change nature. That's the definition of a miracle. You change, you break nature. A miracle means you break nature. Nature is the water to stand. Hashem made a miracle. It stood. What happened over here? It's a much deeper level. What happened over here is Hashem didn't break nature. Space stayed space. 10 and 10 and 2.5. It was not Hashem made it above place. There was clear distinctions of place. 10 and 10 and 2.5. What miracle is that? That is a miracle that combined two opposites simultaneously, finite and infinite, that can only come from a level of godliness which is above both together. Finite could break, infinite could break finite. So there's no more finite. But that finite should stay finite and yet be infinite, that only Hashem could do. It's a different caliber of a miracle. Miracles means you break nature. Here Hashem didn't break nature. Hashem took nature and connected it simultaneously to above nature simultaneously. That is a completely different concept. That only comes from Nimnam Nimnois, from the essence of Hashem. That's what Alter Rebbe is saying over here. Where did Hashem's essence reveal itself? In the Mishkan, Uvei Kache Kadashim Lahazish Chinose, which is Gilu Yichud Yizbarich. What does it mean, the Gilu of Hashem's Yichud? The Gilu of Hashem's Yichud means that only the oneness of Hashem exists. Nothing else exists. So therefore, after the Beis Hamikdash became destroyed, where is this godliness now? And Hashem doesn't have any place in the world. Mishkan umachan l'shifte, the dwelling place, which is the yichud of Hashem. Where is it? Ela arba amis shel halacha. Only in the 4 amis of halacha, which is Torah. Why? Because again, it's the finite and the infinite simultaneously connected. It's the will of Hashem and His chachma, which is infinite. Which is connected to physical halacha. Halacha is limited. You have a mitzvah. You have to eat matzah. The mitzvah of eating matzah is only the night of Pesach. If I eat matzah tonight and I make a bracha, shekidshon mitzvah on the chilas matzah, not only do I do a mitzvah, I did an aveda. I made a bracha in vain. Every mitzvah has time and place. How to be done, when to be done, how to be done. So what did Hashem do in Torah? Hashem took His infinite wisdom and put it into finite halacha simultaneously coexisting. He didn't break the nature. Nature of your chachma understanding, which is limited stays. And like we said many times, a kid starts learning Chumash. Okay? 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever it is. They learned the first pasuk of Chumash. Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'sa'aretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. According to halacha, the kid knows the pasuk. He'll get 100 on the test. And yet, the greatest of minds didn't begin to understand that pasuk. Does that mean the kid doesn't understand it? Of course it is. There's even, you can even connect it to a very severe din, so to speak. If a man learns Chumash, and he knows the Chumash, let's say, and he says to a woman, Harei at mekudeshes li, and you're betrothed to me, consecrated to me, on the condition I know the parsha. On the condition I know the Chumash. The din is if he knows the Chumash, she's a married woman. If she commits adultery, they get killed. Yet, what do you mean he understands the Chumash? Rabbi Kiva didn't understand it. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand it, and you understand it. What's the answer? On your level, you understood it. Why? Because Hashem lets the infinite wisdom of Hashem come into the finite, that you understand it on your level, and it's tak understanding it, yet it still remains infinite. You don't begin to understand it. So therefore, where's this contradictory level of Hashem? He says, because halacha is how to do things, limited in time and place, and in that is Hashem's infinite wisdom. So therefore, that what's Alter Rebbe is saying over here, when a person studies Torah, or they do a mitzvah for that matter, they become a merkava, complete bittul to Hashem. Complete bittul to Hashem. Which is another reason why a Jew has to become very happy. Because look what happens. He did a mitzvah. He's one with Hashem, like Avraham Avinu. Like Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, to be continued. Everybody have a great Shabbos. Monday night again, Parsha at 8:30. Don't forget. Until then, everybody have a great week. Everything good, and have a great Shabbos.